If you ask 15 woodturners a question, you're going to get 20 different answers. This is woodturning my way. Morning. I've been working on this project to use as a demo in the coming up next Saturday or so at the South Plains Woodturners Club here in Lubbock. A lot of the guys have seen some of my demonstrations of Corian work that I've done, and some of them wanted to know how I did it. So I'm going to make this video showing how to make this really nice Corian ring holder. Now, the first time I did this, I didn't do it exactly the way I wanted to. And then so I changed my mind and did it the way I'm doing it on the video. But that turned out that that wasn't the way I wanted to do it again. Because as you know, I do everything my way. So I'll probably make an addendum to this showing how I will do these in the future. And it's mainly just how I connect it to a glue block and how I make the indentation in the bottom. I just didn't do it the way I wanted to, but it came out anyway. It came out very nice. Now, I've deleted the soundtrack in this because all of the noise that's in here, I've got the air handler and my fan and air conditioner behind me and the motors and everything. It just makes so much noise in here you can't hear me when I talk. So I've deleted the soundtrack, and I'm going to be doing a voiceover on this. I hope you enjoy it as much as I enjoyed making it for you. So here we go. Again, today we're going to be making this very nice ring holder out of Corian, and how I do it. I'll show all the steps coming up. To begin with, I select the Corian I'm going to use, and using my table saw, I cut it into 4x4 inch slices. After attaching some 220 sandpaper to a piece of Corian, I wet sand each slice until it's dead flat. Using 5-minute epoxy, I glued 2 pieces of the Corian together, securely clamping them for about 20 minutes. Using my bandsaw, I cut the edges off of each of the 2-inch sections. I then glue enough sections together to make the desired height and let the glue cure overnight. After attaching a glue block made from a 2x4 and a nut corresponding with the thread size of my lathe, I use an R2 cutter on my homemade carbide tool to face off the glue block. After using a straight edge to make sure that everything's flat, I take off a bit more wood to get ready to attach the Corian to the glue block. I now use several pieces of Woodturner's double-sided tape to attach the Corian block to the face block. Be sure you don't drop the tape into the sawdust. It's pretty sticky. Now, using one of the exorbitantly priced rulers from Harbor Freight, I marked the center of the Corian block to help me center it on the faceplate. I use the live center that I use over the mandrel when I make pins. That way it helps me center the Corian block onto the faceplate. That way I can move it a little bit. Now, when I turn Corian, I always wear a leather glove, one that's pretty tight on my hand, because when you turn this stuff, when it's rough, it sends off shards of Corian or material that are like little razor blades. So you want to be sure to wear a full face shield, and then I always wear the glove. And then after you start turning it a bit, you'll get the feathery strips of material that come off, and that stuff can get pretty hot. So I usually wear a glove when I'm turning Corian. I'm now going to use a high-speed steel parting tool that I got from Harbor Freight. Now you need to be sure and sharpen these every time you use them, and several times during the process. Now this is where I should have made the mortise the way I most generally do. I usually use a Forstner bit and cut it in, and then I use a small skew chisel to put in a little bit of a dovetail and then flatten it out. I don't know why I decided to do it this way, but it sure took a long time to get the job done, and again, don't know why I did it this way. Now, using my homemade tools that I got the carbide tips from Captain Eddie, I shaped the bottom of it so it's kind of a convex area, so the outside is a little farther down than the inside. That way the outside touches the table all the way around. I make sure the center of the ring is about a 1/8 to 3/16 of an inch in from the bottom. That way I have plenty of room to set this on there and to make the outside round. I'm now using a round carbide cutter to make the center of the hole a little deeper. I keep the outside edge of the mortise about 1/16 of an inch. You don't need very much to hold this tight. I mean, you might even go in an 1/8 of an inch. I also use the round carbide cutter to kind of clean out the center of the ring holder and make it look pretty. You can see the tiny shards of Corian coming off and hitting my glove. Let me tell you, if that's on a bare hand, it gets your attention. I also have my air handler going. That way it draws a lot of the dust and stuff out the wall of the shop. I use my small skew chisel to clean out the edge of the mortise. It has to be very clean and have a little bit of a dovetail. I use the round carbide cutter to kind of smooth off the edges and round off the outside. And then after I get done here, I shut it off and I put my 60-degree cone center in this to help hold it better. Before I wasn't putting much pressure, and the pressure that I was putting was going towards the piece of work. Now I'm going to work on the side, and you want something to hold this on there very tight. You can clean up the little dimple or hole that'll be in there later, but now I want to hold this good and tight on there before I start turning it. I continue to use the round carbide cutter to start the outside shape of the base of the ring holder. Now I've sharpened my parting tool again, and I go in now to cut down approximately to where the finial will be on the inside of the ring holder. After cleaning out a sufficient amount of material from around the finial, I take the round carbide tool again and start to shape the inside of the bowl that will become the bottom of the ring holder. Thinking I could speed things up a bit, I changed over to my 1/2 inch round carbide tip and started really cutting away quite a bit of the material. But as you can see in just a second, you can tell that it was a mistake. I should have stuck with what I had. See from the catch I got, it knocked it about 1/8 of an inch off center, which it doesn't like. Fortunately, it did not involve any design changes. But as I continued to turn, I noticed that it just wasn't quite centered, and I couldn't figure out what the issue was. Well, I found that as I was turning the inside where the finial is, the Corian gets hot. And I mean, it gets very hot, which was, I guess, good in a way, because having it so hot, it softened the epoxy that was holding the nut in the end of the wood. And instead of snapping the bottom off of the ring holder at the finial, it allowed it to move a bit, so I didn't have to start over again. Now, as you can see, that epoxy is so soft that it's not allowing me to sand it. It just keeps wobbling and wobbling. And this is where I decided that I'd had enough for the night, and I stopped and went in the house. Well, as you can see, by waiting 14 hours, I don't get up early. By now, the epoxy is hardened sufficiently enough that I can start sanding it, and it's no longer out of round. Now, I use Abranet sandpaper, and I wet sand it, starting at about 220, and I go through the grits up to about 600. I won't totally bore you to death with all the sanding. Now, after I use the Abranet, I use micromesh and go all the way up to, I believe it's about 15 or 22,000 grit. After sanding and polishing the bottom of it, I take the faceplate off and put on a small chuck and reverse it into the chuck, and then I use my 60-degree live center and put it up against it to hold it good and tight as I finish the rest of the turning. Then, using my parting tool, I begin wasting away the rest of the material around where the finial will be. Now using a round carbide scraper that I built myself, getting again the scraper from Captain Eddie, I start to finish the finial and cut the bowl of the ring holder just a bit deeper. Now again, using all the grits of the Abranet and all the grits of the micro mesh, I sand this until I get a very fine finish on it. It's almost to the point where you don't even need to polish it. Several years ago, I had to refurbish my headlights on an old car that I had, and I used the leftover polish from that to polish this. And as you can see in a minute, it does a beautiful job on the polishing. You can actually use any kind of auto body polish or acrylic polish or whatever. It works beautifully. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe to my channel and tell all your friends.